And I'm live. And for those of you that are here for an error occurred on Twitter, well, yeah, I'm not going to deal with that. I don't know how to not deal with that, unfortunately. So let's just click go live again and see what happens. I got to click remove. All right, so for those of you who are looking for John Crump on John Crump Live, you're horribly mistaken, unfortunately. So we're going to start rolling the commercials. So welcome to John Crump Live. And let's see, is this the one I got to show?
Proudly sponsored by TUSC, the only cryptocurrency designed with the firearms market in mind, with 3-second processing times. It's the fastest cryptocurrency on the planet. With lower transaction fees than traditional credit cards. It's perfect for your e-commerce needs. For gun guys, by gun guys. Visit TUSC.network for more information and join the digital revolution.
Boom, and we're back to the next ad.
Black Swan Tactical, your #1 source for 2A streetwear. With shirts, mugs, hats, patches, flags, and more. There's always something to help you rep the 2A community. All proceeds go back into our projects. Viewers and listeners can take an additional 10% off with code CRUMPY. Unapologetically pro-gun, pro-liberty, and pro-freedom gear for the front lines of the culture war.
And bang, I'm not going to run this regular intro because I'm going to introduce Bob, who just sat down, because I can catch him just pulling his headphones on. So Bob is going to be the co-host today.
Yeah, so
I'm taking the wheel.
For everybody expecting John, I am. What was I going to say? I was thinking about this last night. I am slightly taller, much stupider, John Crump. Welcome to the show.
Well, I don't know. You get very good compliments from people you work with about your intelligence, so I wouldn't sell yourself short.
No.
And all I got to say is Melissa Martz should be very happy that you're here and not Richard Hoffman, because Richard Hoffman is usually my go-to. So I'm going to bring Melissa in. And Melissa is a candidate for the 18th Congressional District here in Palm Beach. And that covers some of Martin County also, right?
Yes. It's all of St. Lucie, all of Martin, and then the north part of Palm Beach for the time being, because we're redistricting in Florida, so it could change a little bit.
All I know is anybody that has anything to do with redistricting and it doesn't look like a checkerboard is a criminal in my mind. Because I couldn't believe it. I was like the first congressional district on Islip, Long Island. Then all of a sudden I have a different congressman. I'm like, what the heck? What happened? And then I look, they stretched it across Nassau and Suffolk County because they figured all the Republicans are within a mile of the South Shore. And they made it this whole, I'm like, oh gosh. Yep. And the term is gerrymandering.
Yes.
So Melissa Martz is going to primary our current Republican Congress critter. And I use that term affectionately. Because I know Melissa. I actually think I've spent more time talking to our current congressman, because he'd come to our Tea Party meetings and tell me what a 2A guy he was. It's like, I'm red, white, and blue. I'm a 2A guy. And then all of a sudden, he has some Republican donor ship a whole lot of money his way that doesn't like guns. He's like, well, if it's semi-automatic, it's no good. And that's his current opinion. And
yeah, well, we went a little further than that. See, we can all have our opinions, but it's a little concerning when we start advocating as representatives to take the guns away from the people, which, unfortunately is the current state in District 18. I'm sure many people are familiar with the op-ed that was written in the New York Times by the incumbent, which is really connected to some events we've had go on recently. We saw the payout that Remington gave to the Sandy Hook victims' families. And so I think it was around that time, or having to do with school shootings, that the incumbent wrote this article, how we the people should not be allowed to have AR-15s. and that they should only be in the hands of the military, which I find really ironic, especially, give credit where credit is due. He served in the military. So it's really ironic. Often I know people in my family who served are very strong proponents of our Second Amendment right, understanding what they were fighting for. So to see the propaganda, there's so much propaganda around Sandy Hook that I hope we'll be able to get into. But that is just one example, that opinion piece that was written. This has all been done on purpose and with strategy to strip the people of their constitutional rights, their Second Amendment right. And if you hear roosters in the background, I apologize.
Haven't heard them. We got like 2 properties over a rooster. My wife's never heard it, but I guess she's never out gardening. Like
my rooster, but
oh, it is yours?
Yes, yeah. I live on. If you read my bio on my webpage, I have a bit of a homestead on 2 acres, and part of my home is being renovated from unfortunate leaks. So I'm outside today with you and my roosters.
I was going to ask because I haven't seen you behind, out in the pool area before, but
yes.
Yeah, I kind of just completely off topic. I grow dragon fruit, and I'm a little nutso about it. I have like 20 different species, and awesome. Yeah, and I kind of like, we got 1.25 acres, and sometimes I want more property because I think it'd be cooler to grow more things. Then with all the maintenance, I kind of want less property.
Correct. I feel the same. So, I thought I wanted more than 2 acres, but 2 acres is more than enough to manage if you're going to have children and live and work in the world. So
right. Yeah,
chickens are no joke. I grew up having chickens, and I kind of miss the sound of chickens sometimes, but I don't miss cleaning the coop and having to trim the trees. I guess there was a lot of things grew right around where the chickens were. They kept their yard clean, but where the edge of their fence was a lot of weeds, and I was kind of in charge of that. But I do miss chickens. But yeah, they're a handful. You get a couple kids, a coop full of chickens, and maybe 1 dog, and that's all one human can handle. Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot. But you know what? This was part of my American dream, and another kind of, I think, agenda against not just the American people, but all of the people has been to remove us from nature and also to make us afraid of it. Because I think there's a lot of connectivity with our creator that's talked about in our founding documents when we're engaging with creation. So I love it. And I actually have to tell myself to go inside because I just spend all day out in my yard.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with people before and you're right. I didn't think about it that way. The people that live in and generally urban areas are the cities that control a lot of our futures, make a lot of our laws.
Yes.
You would think everything, or you get in a mentality that man made all of this, right? These buildings are all around you. And I have, when the last time it was that I've been driving through the countryside, I remember when my children were little, looking out the window and say to them, how could you look at all of this and not believe that someone intended this, that all of this was an accident? In the autumn, if you're somewhere, the leaves change parts of the country. How could you believe that any of that was an accident?
Absolutely. And my undergrad is biology, and I love the sciences. Big fan of science. And it is actually in recent history that even our scientists studied from a perspective that there isn't a creator. So not that long ago, the monks that I think it's Mendel who discovered genetics, they would go out and study nature with an understanding that there was a creator. So yeah, it's really interesting to see the cultural shift in recent history. And I think as much as we can be out there as we can stand it, because we still have to balance with what our world looks like. I think it's very healthy for us, really important now, especially.
Amen.
Yeah, I find it, I do YouTube as a hobby, basically. And, I'm a cloud architect. So a lot of times I'm just sitting here at the desk for 8+ hours. And when I get a phone call, I usually take an opportunity to walk around. I'll pull some weeds or prune something. And it's really relaxing. That, gets me away from it. So, Melissa, why don't you tell us how you differ from our current Congress critter that you're trying to get deposed?
Sure. So, I will answer because you asked, but what I like to say is I'm not running against someone. I am running for the American people. So, have nothing personally against the incumbent. I mean, I do have something against him and people like him destroying our country, but it's not personal. I really am running for the American people. So what I can say is that I have on purpose picked District 18 to run in because I think it's where I could offer the most improvement and that I can do a better job than anybody else's name who's on the ticket. Different, I would say, first and foremost, I have read the Constitution. And I also booked it in law school, which means I got the highest grade. I like to think I understand it.
Oh, cool.
I understand that I would be taking an oath to the Constitution and that really means something to me. So in my representation of the people, I will not break my constitutional oath. I will not vote against our Second Amendment right. I will not support or stay silent when we are being mandated to do illegal things. It's illegal for our federal government to be bringing down the mandates that they're bringing down. Things like U.S. Department of Education, it's an unconstitutional body. There's actually I say it as much as I can, but there's a bill right now to remove that Department of Education at the level. I would vote in favor of that, repealing our 16th Amendment. So that in a nutshell is understanding our founding documents and vowing to keep my oath and really meaning that. I cannot be bought. And of course I can say that to you and then you just have to trust that I'm a good person. But the evidence of that is in a bit of my own life story, but also in my FEC reporting. So, what are some things that are different? You can see that I'm not puppeted and could not be puppeted by financial strings because I haven't taken PAC money, dark money, special interest group money. I have not raised millions and millions and millions of dollars that would get me to write an opinion piece to take away your AR-15. I am a We the People candidate. My campaign is grassroots. More than that, so I mean, that's a lot to say. I intend to keep my oath, unlike not just the incumbent, but the vast majority of our representatives. But also the children are really important to me. The next generation is really important to me. It is why I am running. I'm a mother. I have an understanding that what I'm doing is to not just restore our republic, but to preserve it for the next generation. I have been an advocate for children, specifically against child sex trafficking. I share often, and in my bio, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And I don't think jokes about raping children is funny. And I don't that somebody that makes jokes like that gets a pass to represent the people and make decisions about children coming through the border. So like the very specific comment was about was a joke about having sex with children overseas because it's legal there. So
I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, to devalue children, because they come from somewhere else, even when you're joking, which to me, it's not a joke, but even let's just say that could be funny in some universe. These are not the people that should be making decisions about the children that are in fact taken from the border, from the other side of our border, and that are sexually abused. It's to me a deal breaker for representation. That's not something I intend to do. I won't be taking that topic lightly. As a matter of fact, it's one of the 3 prongs on my platform is to put an end to child sex trafficking, specifically at our border, because that is within the jurisdiction of our federal government. So yeah, I would say those are the 2 main things. I could go on, but we only have an hour.
Yeah, and that's why we're having you back, because we really enjoyed you last time on the show. So One Car Fast asked a question about the trigger ban in Florida. So that's the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas law. Now that's a state law, and you're running for the U.S. Congressional seat. So unfortunately, you don't have anything to do with that. But if you want to give us an opinion on that law.
That's the opinion that I would give is we really need a re-education or an education of going back to the fundamentals of the role of government. I would say maybe I was a little less ignorant than the average person because I went to law school. But we have a lot of ignorance on the role of government. Many people, especially our representatives, I truly believe have not read our Constitution. So at the federal level, which is the position I'm running for, there should be no infringement of our Second Amendment right. And then at the state level, we have a state constitution, which in our case actually affords us more like privacy, right? We have a stronger state constitution than we do actually a federal constitution. But as far as putting restrictions on Second Amendment right at the state level, yes, I'm not running for a state's position. From a personal standpoint, I support constitutional carry. I support no restriction. As a person in the state of Florida, that's what I would advocate for. If 80% of the people or the majority of the people in Florida wanted to have an X, Y, or Z restriction, we, the people, have more leeway to infringe on our own rights. However, we don't, in my opinion, at the state level, at the school board level, like all the way from the bottom to the top, we don't have real representation. So the laws that we see being passed and the restrictions that we see being passed, in my opinion, do not reflect the people. I think we have corruption and we have politics. We don't have real representation. So how do I feel as a person? I'm not a fan of any restrictions. I support constitutional carry, but at the federal level, my opinion is irrelevant because I don't get to say if I'm a federal representative. I work for the people and I have to uphold my oath regardless of what my personal opinion is.
Well, that's the thing. So I've said this several times. The one thing that I hate about Democrats is they do what they say and say what they do. What I hate about Republicans is they say they're going to do something. They're like, oh, vote us back into the office next term. And then we'll do constitutional carry. Then we'll do the Hearing Protection Act. I'm like, dude, you had the House, the Senate, the president. He would sign the frickin' bill. Do it now. And the Republicans, they always want to dangle the carrot in front of you, like, oh, give me another term in office and I'll do this for you. Where the Democrats are like hammering it. And it drives me crazy.
Well, that's what we call a rhino. I call myself a constitutionalist. I'm running on a Republican ticket. But I think it's a really important point because the corruption and the monster, as I call it, it's not a party issue. It's on both sides of the aisle. And you're right. You have one side that just comes out and says what they're doing, and the other side that lies to the people and is doing the same thing, but from behind the scenes. And to this point, I will share. I went to go attend. I am not loved by the political establishment, by the Republican political establishment. I am supported by the people. And there have been many examples of that, but the most recent and maybe relevant and interesting, I had met with the REC, the president of the REC in Martin County. I met with this woman for a lengthy period of time and, of course, let her know that I was running and answered all of her questions and that I'd be coming to the next meeting I could come to. So when I showed up to this meeting, which is like a few days ago, maybe a week ago, I was not allowed to speak. None of the candidates were allowed to speak. You're supposed to be able to give a 2-minute blurb or, a couple second blurb so that we, the people, get an idea of what your platform is and who's running. It's the Republican Party. That's the whole gig. That's what they're supposed to do is show you what your options are, and also to good candidates. So I was not allowed to speak. And then on top of that, we were told that the candidates would be able to put petition forms on their table, on the Republican Party's table at the Martin County Fair. And you need those forms. If you're not going to just pay your way to be on the ballot, you need to sign those forms to get on the ballot. That's what I'm doing because I believe it's constitutional. So I went to inquire who can I give my forms to? And I was told that I was not allowed to have my forms on the table, that they support the incumbent, and I am not to have my forms on that table. So I ended up, praise God, I ended up getting my own table at the fair. I wasn't going to because I thought I'd be able to stick my forms, rightfully so, but basically the Republican Party is blocking the people from representation, from who their options are for representation. I mean, talk about the rhinos. Well, how do they stay there? How do they get there? They have extreme support. The system itself is sick. So we have to expose it, and we have to start primarying the rhinos and re-infiltrating our own party, really on both sides, but certainly on the Republican side, because I think it most resembles what is constitutional.
Yeah, so RAC is Republican Action Committee. Is that what that is?
Republican Executive Committee. And
REC. Okay.
Yeah. And
because I know there's Palm Beach County, Martin County. There's a bunch of kind of similar type organizations, but unfortunately, My family, my wife personally, she kind of split from the Tea Party because the last guy to challenge Mast, the guy who runs, I mean, I love those people. They're great people. But she's like, hey, they're not going to let him speak. There's going to be no challenger to the incumbent, and they're not going to let him speak. My wife's like, that's it, I'm out.
Wow.
No more Palm Beach County Tea Party for us. I'm like, yow.
Yes, well, I don't think they like me either. I was told before I ever got to a meeting, I was not welcome at that meeting either.
Yeah.
So, and, it's on one hand not surprising, but I have to say that before I started running, I had an idea that things were controlled and corrupted. I didn't really realize how bad until I started running. And I really encourage people to get involved because it doesn't take too long to see what's going on and why it's so important that we get involved and take our republic back.
So do you have enough signatures? How many do you have? How many do you need?
Okay, so I have verified almost 700, and I need 2,600. So
wow.
We're well on our way. And like I say, we'll be at the fair all week collecting signatures. We're right at the front.
Okay.
Spot.
I'm going to be at if you want to send me a PDF, I'll print it out. I'm going to be at the West Palm Beach Gun Show. I'm going to have a table there this weekend.
Oh, thank you. I might be there as well then, because I've been attending as many as I can for that reason. But I will send you and give them to you, but they're also on my website. Anybody can print a form and then mail it in, and people have. I get them in the mail periodically, so thank you to those people.
Oh, great.
Rich will save a little corner of the table for you. You can just bring
it.
He'll print
it.
Good. That's
There's like a GOA petition I'm going to have. I just got notice it's in my mailbox. So I'm happy to have your petition out there. So going a little more Second Amendment, before we talked today that you did an Appleseed program.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So I cannot tell people enough about Project Appleseed. So Project Appleseed is, I believe, a nonprofit. They're not a political organization, and anyone can go on their website and find a weekend event near you. It's for children and adults, and basically for weekends, you are taught marksmanship with a rifle, and you take a laying down, sitting, standing position, and you alternate between your marksmanship and sitting down and hearing some history lessons from specifically the day of April 19th, 1775. And it's stuff that I didn't learn growing up. It comes from historical documents like people's diaries from the time period. A lot of what they teach comes from the book Paul Revere's Ride. And it's incredibly inspiring and just really reconnects you to the origin of our country and how our Second Amendment really came to be. And the fact that a lot of people think that what spurred the Revolutionary War was taxation representation, and that was really only part of the story. In fact, it was the British coming for their gunpowder. It really was a threat on their ability to protect themselves with their firearms that really started our Revolutionary War. So, this program is just amazing. And then for those that don't want to shoot for whatever reason, because it's very physically intensive, in my opinion. So if you don't want to do that, or for whatever reason you can't do it, they offer another program called Liberty Seed, where you just get the history and they go out to churches, schools, whatever organization wants to hear those history lessons. But the last one I went to was called a Lady Seed. It was all women. And so
cool.
Basically everyone was in tears for the whole weekend, because it's so moving when you hear the individual stories, and it just, not only does it renew that gratitude of what was done, and like that you feel that responsibility of what was done in the past to give us what we have today, but the parallel of what happens in 1775, 1776 to what's going on today, and the fight that needs to be had in some ways, and the sacrifice that needs to be made, that was made then, that people are making now. It's just really, it really hits you. So I encourage, especially for kids, I brought my child, and I think it's really good for kids, especially to see like what our country is really, really about and founded on.
Oh yeah, the first time I heard about the Appleseed program was from Chris Ann Hall. She had attended one. Do you know Chris Ann? I never even asked you that.
Yes, I'm not super friendly with her, but yes, I've met her. I know her, and she's lovely.
And the interesting thing is that we're not really taught. There were a lot of women that we don't know about that helped, liberate us from the British and form the country. So there's not a lot of women in the history books with that. The truth is out there that they actually really worked hard for us.
Yeah, women and children, which is, the children were messengers. Women were packing what was needed for the trips. I mean, and in some cases they did pick up rifles. So yeah, it's a lot of lost history. And I admittedly, growing up, I was always like straight A student, always did well in school, but I did not have an interest in history. I had an interest in science. So it was like anything that went in just kind of got dumped out because I didn't really care about it. And as an adult, and now especially with what we're experiencing, I have extreme interest in our history.
Right.
And it's like I'm going back and really learning, it feels like, for the first time. So yeah, I mean, we could all use a refresher, I think.
Oh, heck yeah. And history's wasted on kids, unfortunately, unless they really want to. I'm like, why are we learning this? That's 20 years old. Yeah. When I was in high school.
It's how we present it. And that's why this Appleseed, Project Appleseed, it's different than sitting in a classroom, because you go from, you have a 30-minute lesson and then you go right to using your rifle, so I think it hits something different. And I know both my husband and my son were just like lit up, and we're sharing these stories with others after they came home from the weekend. So I know both my.
Was that you, Rick?
Sorry, I hit some buttons here. I was just making sure. Somebody asked about a link for contributing. So melissamartz.com is where they can contribute to your campaign.
Yes, thank you very much. It's Melissa.
So that's in the description in the video. So if you just go on the description here. So
yes, and
Luigi was asking.
No one is taking a salary. Nobody is getting paid. Nobody is making money for my campaign. Another reason I'm not well liked by the establishment. If they could make money from my campaign, I would have more support, but we've done that all on purpose. Any money that is raised, it goes towards things like, marketing, advertising, flyers, mailers, events, going to a gun show. Nobody is making any money whatsoever.
Wow, that's big. And see, this is what I tell people, and I try to, there's always so many things going on, so many news items. I really want to make it more of a staple when I do a show to tell people it's our responsibility, every one of us out there, to run for office, whether it's dog catcher, school board, Congress, because the more of us out there with just normal freaking people going out and doing this, not being career politicians, we're going to get things done for ourselves. And even locally, like the one question is like, hey, that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas law that prohibits us from having enhanced triggers, what are you going to do about it? Well, that's not you. That's our local political offices, the state of Florida. And in politics, Chris Ann Hall always talks about this, that it's very important with local politics. And we're just seeing it now with all the mask mandates and school boards. Now you know who your school board people are and why it's important to have the right people there. And it's from the ground up that we need to infiltrate, like you've said, whether it's political office, Republican Party, whatever it may be, and get normal people with normal concerns in there.
Well, and I would add to that word normal, people of character. So a lot of these people that have ended up corrupted maybe went in with good intention, but either I believe they scout for these people as well. So like if I had been somebody that was corruptible, like if my FEC reporting showed that, or something in me, kind of people in the establishment could tell that this is somebody that could be puppeted from behind the scenes or could be bought, I'm sure I would be better supported. So with that, whether people intentionally go in to make money and be corrupt, or they somehow are hijacked and become corrupt, what would protect against that? And John Adams has a famous quote that I won't get 100% right, but he says basically our Constitution fails us if we don't have moral people our country. So we really need to use our intuition, but also to take some practical steps to vet people. There's really practical ways to do that, whether it's looking at their voting history or I say the way that they treat children, their FEC reporting, do they have a criminal background? There's all kinds of ways to vet people to see if they have the character that's needed, because like Dr. Martin Luther King said, we really want to be judging people by their character, and that's who we need representing us. People of character that aren't going to lie, that can't be corrupted, that are going to stay true to their oath, and that aren't in it for the wrong reasons.
I would almost want a known criminal to run for office as opposed to, these hidden criminals, just like they're rhinos. Bob, I've been yakking, running my mouth.
No,
Dark
don't.
said you,
I like listening
you have
to Melissa
questions.
talk. I don't want to know. Dark knows nothing. I didn't even realize we've been sitting here for a half an hour. All of a sudden he wrote, no, it's fine. I'll maybe talk later. I don't really care. I'm just here to listen. No, I guess I'll statement and question. I was telling Rich last night, or this morning, I don't do any research. I can blame it on being busy or just dumb, whatever. But I did stumble into Ballotpedia, and one of the questionnaires or whatever, one of the questions from the questionnaire they sent you really hit. And I think more of us need to look at it this way. Do you believe that it's beneficial for representatives to have previous experience in government or politics? And you said, I think we realize the converse is true. And the older I get, the more I want to say.
Look at Donald Trump.
The more offices someone has held, the less likely I am to trust them. And anybody that will have a conversation, and before we even get talking about issues, if that makes sense, right? Whether it's somebody at work or somebody that I know from church, the beginning of my conversation, when they say anything about an election coming up, and within a couple months of an election, at least around here, that ends up being a lot of small talk, right? Everywhere you go. Before anything else, is that I trust less the more offices, or I feel that if I'm going to vote for somebody who's held 27 offices and been doing it for 47 years, I need to do more research versus somebody, right? One of the guys that we voted in the school board has been a volunteer firefighter and ran a plumbing business for the last 20 years. And just all of a sudden, and it comes across the way they speak as well. I still do my research, but I love that, and I think more of us need to, I guess. And I guess I want to take your question, your answer, and say how true it was, and say anyone who's watching this, tell anyone that you talk to, right? If you're having conversations about elections, well, why are you voting for them? We should all be asking that if we're true advocates for what we believe in. And if it's just that, well, he was whatever, right? He's been the police chief for 30 years. That doesn't necessarily mean he'd be good for the next office. And I'm coming around to the question. We know you're an attorney, right? And a mother, and you have chickens. What else do you love? What else are you passionate about? Because I think that's what I would like to see on the campaign flyers, honestly. When I see this is how many offices Joe Schmo has held, and this is, what they want to do for you. I want to know what they actually like to do, if that makes sense. I'd rather know more about them.
Sure. Yes. Okay. Well, first, I just want to affirm what you said, and I guess what I said, which is that that's why term limits are really important. We don't have term limits right now in Congress. I say if I got U.S. Congress, if I got that one thing done, that would be a huge feat. I will term myself out after 2 terms. If I'm blessed that the people want me to represent them for 2 terms, I would term myself out. The incumbent is going on term number 4. So, even if someone's doing a good job, for the exact reason that you said, we can't keep endorsing career politicians. It breeds corruption. What am I passionate about? Well, I'm not sure exactly how you meant the question, if you meant like recreationally or not, but
yeah, recreationally. Yeah,
okay.
The person. That's the campaign ad I want to get, or I want to view on Facebook. I want to say,
okay, I'll try
this is John. He's running for school board, and he likes painting and long walks in the woods or whatever, right? I want that kind of information. Yeah.
Sure.
Is that weird, Rich? I'm not hitting on
No.
I know that's the way you're thinking it.
No, not at all. And I get accused of that because I want to bring other than old white dudes to the channel, like old white dudes that like guns. I'm always looking to get somebody other than the old white dude. And then when I'm excited, like we had Bulletproof Blondie on the show, and I was getting messages. I was getting lit up like, you're all crushing on her. I'm like, dude, not my type. My wife is my type.
Yes.
And it's like, no, she's into guns, she's into cars.
And fiery.
Yeah, what are you passionate about that's not on Ballotpedia, right? That isn't traditional campaign stuff. Yeah.
I'm not sure what is. I can't remember everything that's on there, but well, first I'll say that something that may be on there, which I spend a lot of time doing, is my nonprofit for single mothers. So like today, I just dropped off a bunch of diapers and baby clothes. That is my passion. I love that whole thing because I was a single mother. And so being able to give back in that way just brings me great joy. I don't believe in altruism. It really is very selfish. They say that you release the same hormones in your body when you do for somebody else as when you do for yourself. So it's very selfish, but I very much enjoy being involved with my nonprofit. And then let's say I could wake up and do anything I wanted to do for the day. And I didn't have the responsibility that my Declaration of Independence tells me that I must fight. Let's say I didn't have to do that with my day. Also, I'm a homeschooling mother. So we'll just put the passion of being a mother out of the way for a second. My husband, God bless him, is not even on that list. He's busy working. So if I could do anything with my day, I really enjoyed, I started rock wall climbing when I was studying for the bar, because I'd sit and study for 8 hours a day, and then I needed to like do something physical. And I just love the whole culture around people that climb. It's so positive. And if I could incorporate more of that into my life, I would. I'm also a yoga instructor. I love yoga. I love physicality. If I get to live long enough and I'm still like in shape, I'm thinking maybe my 40s or 50s, I always wanted to take up boxing.
Wow.
But I haven't done it, so I can't say it's one of my hobbies. It's just something I want to do if I had time, and my body holds out. And I also discovered during the pandemic that I enjoy flipping furniture. So like getting like older pieces of furniture and
cool.
I like to take like old things and make them new. So that's all I got right now.
I think my wife might have broached that. There were a couple things that I know I saw in someone else's trash that were suddenly in the basement with a paint can next to them, and then they left. So I don't know if she gave them away and took them to work. But I was like, "You painting a bookshelf down there?" She's like, "Yeah, it was somebody was throwing it out." I was like, "Is it?" She's like, "No, it's going to leave the house." I was like, "Okay, I just need to know if I need to make room for it somewhere." No, that's really cool. And you said, I guess, physicality. I think we need more. I don't know. Not that you're supposed to be a role model for the entire country, but we need more people that are active, I guess, in the public eye, if that makes sense.
And my wife's a workout nut. She comes home, she gets things ready for tomorrow for work, and then boom, we got a whole room that's her gym, and then she yells at me for not working out enough.
And thank you for bringing up term limits too. That's something I don't remember enough. And hopefully this year, when I'm speaking to or vetting who I'm going to vote for locally here in Pennsylvania, I put their feet to the fire with that. That's something that I think we should be asking anyone, local up to wherever. If we get in front of someone who's running for office, you know what I mean? Whether it's a small office or not, how they feel about that, I think, tells a lot about their approach to politics in general and governance, I guess, right? Or representing people the way that you discuss.
Well, there's something called the term limits pledge that candidates can sign. I signed it. I believe the incumbent signed it, but it's just basically to say that if the term limits bill comes across your way, that you will vote in favor. But I mean, that should be something that should have been done a long time. It should be done in a second. Of course, the people in there don't want it. Why not? That job, to me, it should be so exhausting that you don't want to be in there very long, because you're just, giving your all every day working for the people. Who would want to be there for 20 years unless you I don't know, all of a sudden you become a millionaire on your $170,000 salary.
Yes.
Which is possible. Or your stocks do really well against all probability. I mean, like, you got to wake up.
Yeah, it needs to not be a career. You're absolutely right. At least at that level. Yeah, I've thought for a long time. Yeah, a couple of years is enough, and it should be people without political. I know we'll never get that, but it should be someone I almost feel like it should be somebody who's never held office, I guess, or never held an office above maybe a local or regional level, right? I'm okay if my state rep goes and serves, 4 years or whatever in Congress, but to have people that have just been doing it for 20 years and now they get this base of their retirement, right? It must be pretty easy. You're absolutely right, because there's people that have been doing it for forever and look like they're old enough that I wouldn't want to work anymore. And they're still doing that. Yeah. So it can't be very difficult, I guess, or they're not putting themselves into it as much as they should. You're absolutely
Oh gosh, who am I thinking of? She was mayor of West Palm Beach, and she's now in Congress for how many years? What's her name? I can't think of it. This lady makes Joe Biden look like Einstein.
No, she sounds awful. Anyway.
She, like, there is, unless an aide is whispering in her ear what to say, she has no clue. This lady should be home with her grandkids. Lois Frankel. And I'm like,
oh yeah, sorry,
what?
I don't know. Yes, God bless it. Like that is the epitome of a problem. You know, like Alcee Hastings just died in his seat. I mean, if there isn't a real, if somebody doesn't really go after that seat, I mean, the same thing's going to happen with her. She's just the holding place, you know.
But it's like D+10. So for those of you that don't know the terminology, that means there's 10% more Democrats. So it's almost impossible for a Republican to win. And I almost got arrested. So as the Tea Party, we went to one of her meetings and she was talking. And I got to get onto some housekeeping right after this, because somebody brought up that an illegal alien hit and ran, killed somebody. And then this illegal alien without a driver's license, and I think they were drunk at the time, wasn't deported. And Lois Frankel says, see, we didn't break up the family by deporting him. I'm like, yeah, you broke up a family. That person was dead.
Wow.
And my wife, like, I wasn't looking to the back corner of the room, and there was a state trooper back there, and the state trooper was pointing at me, you know, for my wife to, like, you know, because he was getting ready to, like, pull me out of the room.
Yeah, which is not right, because that's a violation of your First Amendment right to speech. Yeah.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I was blazing her. So yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. I look at Joe Biden. I think it's a case of elder abuse. This guy should be home with his grandkids. And
well, I don't know if we want him with the kids, but yes, he should be home. Or in a home, or I agree. Yes. It's abusive.
So housekeeping. People have been, the thumbnail, I used a tool and it deleted some parts of the AR. There's no sights on the AR-15. If you look, there's part of the lower receiver missing also. That was me. I quickly did thumbnail and background delete, and it deleted the sights and parts of the AR-15. So people were commenting on that. So one other person asked, I think I know your answer on this. I 3D print all sorts of stuff, and if I held stuff up that I've 3D printed, YouTube would end the stream right now. They're asking your opinion on 3D printed firearms.
Well, so again, I mean, it really, at the federal level, I stand strongly in protecting our Second Amendment right that there should be no restriction that comes from the federal level, because it would apply to every single one of our states. So whether it's 3D printing or anything else, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. The federal government doesn't get to have a say. And then we're looking individually at our states. It should be what the people want. So, you know, I'm not well versed enough to say what the cons are, if there are any cons that's any worse than not having 3D printing. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but that is to be deliberated between the people, and then for them to go to their representatives, and the representative would advocate on behalf of what the people want at the state level. So, you know, again, as a person, not as somebody that wants to represent at the federal level, but as a person, I'm a very strong, individually, I'm a very strong proponent of our Second Amendment right and the ability, not just to carry constitutional carry, but to have the same weaponry as our government, to be able to form militia and overthrow them if we ever needed to. I say, if we experience tyranny like what we're experiencing today, that is the reason that we're allowed to have the same weaponry. So with the 3D printing, if that gives us the opportunity to have the same weaponry, unless the government's not going to get to 3D print, to me, then we get to have the same weaponry. And that's me answering as a person. On the federal level, it wouldn't matter if I was pro-gun, anti-gun, restrictions, not restrictions. We just don't have the luxury. If you're going to be a federal representative, it's just not within your job description to start limiting our Second Amendment right. It would be left to the state's issue.
So let me ask, so you're going for federal office, state stuff is separate. The Second Amendment says to you, we can have machine guns?
So yeah, I actually think I should be allowed to have a tank in my backyard.
Okay, because somebody said, "Whoops,"
That's
she
right.
hesitated.
That kind of answers the 3D printing question, honestly, right?
Yeah.
In my head, I was gonna be like, the correct answer is that 3D printing firearms is First and Second Amendment rights. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's
yes. And what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter. I think I should be able to have a tank in my backyard. You know what I mean? Like I mean that sincerely. I know it sounds like a joke, but I really mean it. But I'm really big on the role of government and being a constitutionalist. I actually had somebody email me with a concern about Christian nationalism, which is to say, like, people think like, oh, if you're gonna be a Christian, then you can't support the Constitution, or if you're a Christian, then you have to kind of legislate Christianity for everyone. So, again, if we understand our Constitution, that's why I call myself a constitutionalist, my religious beliefs or views are kind of irrelevant, although it seems to make people like me or feel better about me when they learn, about my history of faith. But it's really irrelevant. So that's why I answer the question that way, because I can tell you my opinion all day long. I think I should be able to have a tank after I read my Constitution, both state and federal. I think that's what it says.
Right. And cannons.
As a representative, and especially, talking about that Project Appleseed, it's very interesting on that day, April 19th, 1775, when the British came through, they weren't on their journey back. They weren't able to access their cannons. And if they hadn't been able to access their cannons in a more substantial way, I think they let off like one cannon, that would have been the end. We would be, speaking with a British accent.
Oh, hell yeah.
The fight was a little more fair, even though not very fair, because there were so many of them. So little of the militia and so many British. However, because they were well-trained marksmen, these were farmers and store owners, but because they were well-trained marksmen and they had these organized militia and they couldn't get to their cannons, which I would equate now to our tanks and to the machine guns and the weaponry that we're kept from. Okay, because they couldn't get to that, they had a chance and they made an impact, and it started an 8-year war that ended in our favor. So that's why I believe that when you look at the history, you look at the intent of the documents, what the documents say. Now, if people don't like that, if you think, well, we shouldn't have machine guns and we shouldn't have the tanks and we shouldn't be able to 3D print, well, then the government shouldn't get to do that either. Or we have to modify our Constitution. There's a way to do that. Or we have to move to another country. So there's a reason why I answer the way that I do. So I apologize if it came off as hesitation.
Yeah. No, I want to make sure that I asked you that question in such a way you got to answer it, because I know what your opinions are. As a goof, and my wife was total on board with this. They had a gun buyback. I think it was Delray Beach or so. So I went to the hardware store. I got a couple of pieces of pipe, and I made a slam fire shotgun in 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I'll get $100 for this. It cost me $20 to make. And I'm like, let me go to the buyback. I'll extort the buyback.
No, your answer was excellent, by the way, unless I wanted to say, if you're not,
thank you.
And I just learned about, and I think we're still talking about the 3D printing, right? I just learned about it maybe 6-9 months ago, right? And you answered, or your answer was the thought process that I think more of our federal government representatives should be, wherever they are, about something they don't know anything about. I guess, if that makes sense. I think they've just decided they're either pro or anti, whatever the issue is. And if somebody says a thing, they say, well, I don't like the thing, right? They don't think about it. That makes sense. Your response was very well. It needs to follow the process, right? It's not your opinion, is what you were saying. And too many of them just have their opinion, whether it's the will of their constituents or not, or whether it follows the federal government. They have their opinion. So when they're asked the question, they answer it based on their opinion. Yeah. And I think your answer was perfect. It should be a thought process, and too many, and the longer they're in office, the worse it gets. There's too many that it is not. They don't think about it. They don't measure it against our Constitution, against our laws, or the impact on the rights of the people. They just have their opinion, and it's been their opinion for 20 years, and they just keep voting or answering the questions the same way. Yeah, they should be thinking about it like you just did.
Thank you. Yes, opinion and propaganda.
Well, here's something, and I want your opinion on this, because I think I know what you're going to say, but this is like nails on a chalkboard to me. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I think I get a lot of what goes on in the Constitution. I think I have a better understanding than most people. Let me like level set there. I'm shocked at, I know what the Constitution says about our federal elections and how they need to be run. Meanwhile, they want to push a bill through Congress that says, oh, all federal elections are going to be run by the federal government and the states don't run them anymore. I'm like, you can't make a law that says that because of the Constitution says it will be run by the states.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so that like your head exploding after you after you read the Constitution, you see the laws or the attempt at laws that are illegal. It is just mind blowing, and it's hard. It's really hard to digest. I mean, this kind of mind blowing experience has been happening for me for the last 2 years, starting when I sued Palm Beach County with some other attorneys against their mask mandate, and I understand the law, and we sued under our federal constitution, and to me it should have been a cut and dry case. And yeah, the tyranny is just unbelievable, and that's why we cannot sleep on this. It's why we just can't, we just don't have the luxury of, well, somebody else will take care of it, because exactly what you're saying, it is blatant, it is in our face, and it's everywhere. It's like all down the line, all the topics, all the issues. It was always going on, but it was from behind the scenes, and we were kind of pacified and brainwashed from generation to generation. And now in these last 2 years, they have just put it in front of our faces to where if we don't wake up to it, if we don't recognize that they do not have the power, that we, the people, are the fourth branch of government. We have to be the check now on our 3 corrupted branches. We must stand up and put them in check. We will lose our republic. And I've started saying that, I was saying we need to preserve our republic, but now I realize we really need to restore it. We have not had a government that has worked for the people for a very long time, well before I was born. So yes, to your point, it is unconstitutional, along with everything else they seem to be doing these days.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, it's just nutty to me. And in looking at Canada and the truckers,
yes,
I'm like, you could complain that they're clogging up the roads, and somebody made a very valid argument about that yesterday. Like, okay, they're maybe breaking laws about blocking roads, but this is a peaceful protest, and they're not burning down buildings, setting police cars on fire, and burning down police stations with cops in it.
Don't you think it's a bit like gaslighting? Like
oh, hell yeah.
There's me when they say like the truckers are doing this to people can't get to work, and no, they're not doing it. The government is doing it, because the Canadian government could end it every day. They're not hearing their people. They're not holding a meeting to hear them. Forget giving them what you want. They're not even hearing them. So who's really doing the damage here? It's not them. They're being gaslit. That this is their last resort. And then, yeah, that whole situation, I'm encouraged to see people standing up, but it's disheartening to see the tyranny that just keeps coming down like a hammer. But yes, the people are, 2 years in, they're standing up. And a story I will share that I hope is encouraging. It was encouraging to me when I heard it. I watched this guy. He put up a little video from Australia where they had a protest. He was recounting his experience, and he said that there was thousands of people, like 3,000 or 4,000 people in his estimation, protesting outside of a police station in Australia. And all the police were lined up, just standing there to be intimidating. And then all of a sudden, like the big wig comes out with a big gun. The guy didn't know what kind of gun it was. He said it was just a really big gun. And the idea was that he was being intimidating to the people. So this guy made his way up to the front of the crowd, and he starts yelling at the cop with the big gun, saying like, what are you doing? Like, are you going to use that on us? Like, we're the people, like your job is to protect us. And he said that the moment he knew that they were going to really win this thing overall was that one by one, the men in the crowd started coming up around him and started screaming at this guy with the gun, shoot me first, shoot me first.
Wow.
And they dispersed. So, yeah, I mean, it actually made me cry, because
Sure.
For men to stand up and be men, but also give me liberty or give me death. When the people stand up, it's really powerful. And in those stories that you hear in Project Appleseed, there's a lot of victory. There was also a lot of bloodshed. There was a lot of tragedy, but truly, this is how I feel, and how many are coming to realize, just like our founding fathers did. If I cannot be free, then I don't need to be under your rule. Because back to that idea of having a creator, we are eternal. We are more than these physical bodies, and we're not to be ruled over, by these dark forces. So it is, on one hand, discouraging to see the tyranny that kind of just keeps coming down in Canada, but I like to focus on the hope that's there. I mean, people are standing in their sovereignty, not just there, in America, in places like Australia, and that's how we win. We don't give up, and we don't love our lives more than we love our liberty.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Wow. That's like you totally knocked it out of the park. We're coming up on the close here. Why don't you tell us how we can support you?
Okay. So how you can support is very easy. To go on the website and you can subscribe. So you'll get emails about when we're going to a gun show and we need some volunteer help. I don't bombard with emails. Of course, if people want to donate, one way to donate is in kind. So like, if somebody, for example, if somebody donated a laptop to the campaign, that's considered an in-kind donation. I have magnets that people can put on their cars as an in-kind donation. This is advertisement. That's really helpful. That's been really successful. And so, so also advertising materials. If you don't want to give money for flyers, you can just buy some flyers. That's also very helpful. So volunteering, in-kind donations, hosting meet and greets. I don't know if you see my dog in the background. Hosting meet and greets is really important because I'm really interested in meeting with the people. So whether it's 2 people or 10 people or 20 people, I'm happy to go out and meet and be questioned and be vetted in person. And people can just reach out on the website to set that up.
Awesome. That's what I was going to ask, or I scribbled down here a while ago, right? So you have 700 signatures. You need 2,600. I don't know what the deadline is. Yeah, but I wrote down, how does someone find out if you're running, right? If you're campaigning to represent them, and then how can they make sure that they get access to sign, to put their name on that petition?
So the form is on my website. You can print it out, fill it out, mail it in, and then of course, if you want to print out a few of them and get some others and mail that in, that is super helpful as well. Was there another question that I missed in there?
No, probably not. I don't think. Oh, how do they find out if they can vote for you, if they're going to be able to vote for you once you get on the ballot? How do they know that they're in? Because there is currently going on a redistricting, right?
Yes, there is a redistricting. There's all speculation over what that's going to look like, if it's going to change at all. So we really don't know. But I'm registered with state and federal government, so I'm on there. The only thing left for District 18, I checked District 18, so whatever that ends up looking like, and then I have every bit of confidence that we will get the signatures we need to get on the ballot. And if I don't, and I think it actually is going to end up costing me more between all of I have to pay 10 cents a form. Everything I go to, I have to pay. I give my volunteers a stipend for like food and gas. So by the end of it, I'll probably pay as much or more than if I paid the $10,000 to get on the ballot. So it's really not about the money. It would actually be easier to raise $10,000 and put my name on the ballot. I am not running for my health. If the people don't want me on there, if I can't get the signatures, I don't deserve to be on there. But I really don't think that's going to be a problem for us.
Great. So I see you got form on your website. So I'll download the form and I'll print them up and I'll have them at my table at the gun show this weekend in West Palm Beach.
Thank you. I think I'll be there. I'm pretty sure I'm signed up for that one. I have to check. I'll text you which one I'm going to be at.
Okie doke. Alrighty, Bob, you want to tell the people how they can find you?
No, I don't. I want to thank Melissa for being here and thank her for restoring my faith, I guess, in our future a little bit, right? Some days it's really hard when you see what's on the news and you see what's going on, and talking to or hearing from folks like you makes me feel better about the future, I guess. Kind of like when I look at my children and I see what they understand and see what they're going to do. Interacting with other people that show some promise that we're not lost or that we can restore the Republic the way you do now. Thank you again, Melissa.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us on John Crump Live. And I just want to say thanks to everybody and call that the end of the show. Now I got to click the right button here.